Good evening. So, as a part of the preparations for a royal wedding, they are planning to clear up those not very good looking homeless people. They kind of spoil the fun for the royals. That's barely a surprise on the side of the British government. Indeed, that's normal for them. What is far more interesting in this story is the reaction of the common people. So, what we read in the headlines stirs anger, draws wide criticism. Aha! And the anger and the criticism are directed towards? Towards the chief liar only. On this image, his right hand is up in the air. And the pawns, the angry pawns, they simply refuse to see themselves in the mirror, refuse to accept the reality that it is them only who maintain all this. Why are they angry now, pretending to be surprised? Why weren't they angry when they voted for the corrupt politicians who are now kindly clearing up the homeless? The pawns know very well that the scam shouting on the microphone is corrupt. And still the pawns continue to deceive themselves that all politicians must be corrupt, and that's why we have no choice but to maintain the liar in front. What a lame excuse. The pawns are even lazy to do basic research and find out which are the relatively less corrupted liars. And by the way, in every country now and then surface independent politicians who are actually noble and honest. But they stand almost no chance to be elected for any meaningful position just because the pawns wear these blinders that all politicians must be corrupt, we have no choice, and because the pawns are just lazy to change anything. Because of this terrible stagnation in the brain of the pawns, not only they themselves lead a life which is actually miserable compared to the way they could be living in case they decide to no longer carry the burden of a mountain of parasitic structures on their shoulders. But in addition to that, they ruin the lives of their own children and the lives of millions all around the world, even on the other side of the world, where most of the land is owned by British people who consider themselves royalty and have convinced millions to also call them royalty. So they are pawns in Britain, in Europe, they are pawns all over the world. We are all pawns actually, and the British pawns that I'm talking about are actually far better than most others. Because most recently they dared to tell the United States of Europe to mind its own business and stop ruining the economy and the traditional way of the English. So that's brave. But it should not serve as an excuse to avoid openly facing the core of the problem. Alleviating minor symptoms is nothing. Unless you kill the disease, it will come again and again. And the core of the problem is that hoarding of money is inhumane. It is against human rights, and it should be made illegal. By hoarding, I mean people being allowed to possess unreasonable amount of assets which are incomparable to the amount that one needs to live normally. I'm not talking about making it illegal to be rich. I'm really talking about possessing assets in unreasonable amounts like billions while others starve. That is against human rights, that is against common sense, and that is maintained, carried out, implemented by their central banking and the scam monetary system, which practically keeps the world in slavery. And don't blame again the man waving his hands. It is not him, it is those supporting him. They power this slavery. It is painful to see the truth that it has been us. We prefer always to blame some third party. Yes, there are such third parties, messengers of the devil, and they're faithfully carrying their devilish mission. But what I'm asking you, are you doing your mission? Did you come here to enjoy slavery? Is this the best that you can come up with? So, this is what I wanted to tell to the pawns of England, but I hope that no pawns from Germany have heard me, because Santa Maria, this will sound like such a heresy for them. Can you imagine? Actually, so many people, probably most of them in Germany, they think that they live in a democratic republic. I've met such people myself and I still can't believe it. And most of the people in Germany probably even love this democracy because they even make sure it spreads to other places, like, for example, in Spain, where people are brutally beaten because they dare to publicly say that we don't want to be part of your wonderful European Union. Can you please keep it to yourself? And we are not talking about a couple of people, we are talking about the majority of people in an area of a big country. And it's not the first time in Greece against the majority of people simply did not want to be a part of this wonderful European Union anymore. Response? Chemical weapons. Besides all the police violence, they used warfare-grade chemical weapons, which is also strictly forbidden by the international laws of warfare, besides being obviously inhumane. So Germany and France, they have become the leaders of spreading of these waves of love slash democracy around Europe. So what was I talking about? Ah yes, the pawns of England. I'm going to the altar to pray that one day the pawns of Germany and France will also consider this option of the possibility to dream about living one's own life, at least like those in England, instead of living an imaginary life of brotherhood and love, strangely backed up by police violence. And since a couple of days, even by laws openly banning free speech in Germany. Of course, France and the rest may follow. And as far as the royal wedding, amongst the messages of the wrongly directed anger, there is one very sensible message. The homeless deserve a royal wedding invite. And that's only to start with. After that, they deserve to get their land back, where they can grow food and live an honorable life. And not only the homeless around the London Palace, but as well the billions whose land has been stolen, purchased by the banksters, because the pawns maintain them, give them the power, authorize them to print as much money as they wish and buy off whatever they wish. So people don't know their true power. Voting can do a lot. Although the voting system as such has been introduced to create the wrong impression that people choose their leaders, which is actually a lie. For example, look at the European Union. The top positions, they are not elected by the people. Also, you will see images on TV that there is voting going on in Brussels. But then they will not tell you that the voting is conducted in such a way that the people who vote don't have time to hear the questions. What to speak of thinking about the answer? The questions are read with supersonic speed. They don't have time to understand them well. What to speak of the hundreds of voters elected by the people in the European Union who have no chance to understand the questions because they are not fluent in English. They use translators, and the translators, they cannot possibly translate with such a fast speed. It's just impossible for human, because there is less than a second time given for voting often. So, although in overall the voting is scam for many reasons, it still gives us a very limited freedom, and if we use it wisely, we can, with peaceful means, make the earth once again belong to the people and not to the banksters like now. So, how to utilize it properly? First of all, at election times, if there is a party or a candidate which proposes real measures towards a fair monetary system, towards making hoarding of money illegal, then it is the best option to vote for this person or party, even though other parts of their manifesto may not be that good. But we have to be very careful and distinguish between real measures against the banksters and empty talk. Empty talk is about regulations which will help private and small businesses. Such regulations will never help the small businesses. At most, they could just make the situation somewhat bearable for some until the banksters buy off entire countries and gradually become legal owners of everything. Even if some small law may give a temporary relief to your small business, in the long run it is just question of time and it will be devoured eventually by the big groups of companies owned by the banksters. Unless we vote for somebody who really will do something, like and an example of a practical suggestion, Ron Paul has been campaigning for a long time about auditing the Federal Reserve and then closing it down. Now that is a real measure because the Federal Reserve is one of the prime tools which a small group of people use to legalize buying off the world with money that they have created from nothing. These are not elected people and they have a full control over America practically because they control all the money. Are there elections in your country? Are there parties or individuals which propose real and direct measures towards ending the era of banksterism? If you know of such, you can consider submitting them to the forum thread in the description because many people are not interested in politics. They may not know of such parties or individuals. Maybe they will discover them through this forum thread and vote for them. So in America there is at least one fraction, Ron Paul, which I mentioned. But what about Europe? Well, I don't follow politics myself. I hope there will be interesting submissions in the forum thread. I hope there is anything to submit. But in general, in countries where we don't have any candidates which offer such direct measures, still, I would recommend to you to actively vote for the parties which are against the European Union. Because what can I say about the EU? The gap between rich and poor has been quickly widening since the European Union took over. Big companies like Google, they don't pay taxes at all in Europe and nobody asks them. Crime levels have risen drastically since the European Union took over and introduced the new laws which they call humane and love, and everybody loves each other. Small businesses, farmers, sustainable energy, all this has been heavily suppressed by the European Union. So there is a lot of power in voting. Have a nice day and don't forget to use it.